Episode number 212 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. So, in today's episode, I welcome a dear client of mine who actually found me through the podcast. We worked together. I really had a very strong connection with her, and she has a beautiful story of hope. And I love stories of hope because it's always really amazing for people to hear while they're going through the journey, while they're going through challenges, to hear other people's stories of hope. So, stay tuned. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So welcome, Angelica. And first of all, it's so exciting. It's like full circle because you started out as a listener.
I know. It's so funny too because it was around this time that I actually stumbled upon your podcast. So yeah, it is a full circle thing for sure.
So we just had a conversation. I had to interrupt you because I was like, we got to put this on the podcast. So, because it is inspiring for other people. We were just talking in the pre-talk about how your story is going to inspire so many people listening and how you yourself also felt that way when you listened to other people's stories.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember at one point last year, I was listening to like 10 episodes a week, trying to make little adjustments from all the information that I was learning to even just like meditation, manifestation, prayer, just really trying to get through my tough time of having a couple losses last year of miscarriages.
Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing your story and really what you went through last
Of
year
course.
or before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I could start way from the beginning when I first had my son. So, and it kind of helps like drive this story. So, me and my husband, we started our family back in 2016. I got off the pill like a textbook. I got pregnant. Like it was, I didn't even think I was going to get pregnant that fast. I just got off the pill. I think the first time we tried, I got pregnant because I remember waiting for my period after I got off the pill and like, where's my period? And it was like, no, you're pregnant already.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a pretty smooth pregnancy. I didn't think anything of it. The second time, it was a little bit different now because 4 years had gone by. And I kind of had the same mentality of like, oh, I'm going to get pregnant right away. In fact, that's why I had been on the pill for so long because I was like, we're just not ready to have another kid until we're fully ready,
So
and
you
I
got back on the pill like after you had your first son, your son.
yeah, so probably within the year, because I was nursing for a little while. So, and I didn't really want to be on the mini pill and stuff. So, until I was done nursing him, like 6, 7 months, I then was like, okay, I can get back on the pill since he's starting to eat solids now. And so I got back on the pill. So, this is at the end of 2017, all the way until fall, September of 2020. So, like,
Mhm.
for a good 3 years consistently on the pill. And I again had that same mentality of, oh, nothing's gonna, hinder us or anything. Well, the second time, it actually took a while just to even understand my body at this point because I had went from like a very regular cycle to like now my cycles were kind of erratic.
Mhm.
It was like all over the place, and I just kind of chalked that up as like my body not really knowing, oh, this is like I guess for me, I was kind of like, oh, it's just because I got off the pill and my body's still trying to get in sync and stuff like that.
So was it like
Well,
a short cycle, long cycle, like all over the place kind of thing?
longer longer cycles, I think it got like to be 33, 34 days, where at first, from the time that I was 16 until I had my son, I had always been 28, 29 days, like
Hmm.
very specific, perfect cycles.
Right.
And I actually have a comment too later on when we talk more about kind of how I found out like the pill is actually like considered an endocrine disruptor and
Hmm.
there's just a lot of things associated with that, especially like I have fibroids and things like that. But so I didn't think anything of it. I still, and then probably around December of 2020, I was kind of like, huh, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't even know when I'm ovulating. Well, turns out like I ovulate very late in my cycles. Now I do because my cycles are longer. So I finally figured that out. We got pregnant by the grace of God in January. And, again, I'm thinking, oh, it's fine. And I'm noticing things like I'm bleeding. And I remember one time, probably within the first 8 weeks, I like went to the bathroom and and I was like, this is unusual because with my son, I didn't have any bleeding or anything. And I was like, I'm sure it's nothing. I remember calling the nurse triage, telling them, and we went in, the baby was fine. Nothing was abnormal. Well, by the time I got to my 12 week, I walked in that day, super happy, super excited to see the baby bigger. Immediately, she puts the Doppler on my stomach. She cannot hear the baby's heartbeat.
It's
And
horrible.
I started to panic because through the Doppler, she could hear my heartbeat really starting to beat up. And she brings in an ultrasound machine, and the baby's there, a lot smaller than they should be. Even I knew that just from my previous experience with my son. Baby's not moving, there's no heartbeat, flicker, nothing. So then to be sure, she brings me to the bigger one. And that's when she's like, I'm so sorry. And I just remember just I mean, it was probably like I always say like I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like this is probably the one of the worst things that a woman can go through because for me it was the thought like I had been carrying a child that had passed away inside of me for a while now. I mean, this had been at least 3 weeks since my last ultrasound, and on top of it, my body was still holding on to this pregnancy. And very I was alone. It was COVID, no one can come with you. I remember I called my mom and the doctor called my husband, and I'm just like screaming on the phone and
Oh, yeah.
crying. And my mom's like, "Where are you? Do you need me?" And I was like, "My car is here. I have to get it together to go home." And my husband's like on the phone, on the other phone that the doctor brings in, and he's like, just stay calm, just stay calm. It's okay. And I somehow compartmentalized myself to get in my car and drive home since I only live like 10, 15 minutes away. And we got there, I pulled into the garage and I parked my car and immediately started crying. Like he came out into the garage and just held me. And I just was just crying uncontrollably. Like that type of pain is just so painful because I had all these hopes, all these excitements, all these things. And to kind of have it, I kept thinking like, did I not take my prenatal pills enough? Did I drink too much sugar? Maybe I should have not gotten that Starbucks. Like all of these things that I remember just beating myself up through that whole process. And this happened at the end of March. So I probably spent all of April into May just really depressed. And they asked me how I wanted to, purge my body and stuff like that from the pregnancy. And I opted to take the pill, the mitoprolol pill. And it honestly was probably okay at the time when I thought about it, but it actually didn't all end up clearing out of my uterus, unfortunately. So I had to end up going back for a DNC, which is, some people, wherever they stand on that, for me, it felt very much like a violation. Like you're
Hmm.
taking out, pieces of my baby and stuff like that. But it had to be done for me to not get sick. So after that, I kind of spent the summer in this like mental state of just, you're going to be okay. Your guys are going to try again. It's going to be fine. And we tried again, and we actually got pregnant again in August. And I remember because we were at our 7-year anniversary, we went to Nashville for the weekend, and I was like, I think I'm pregnant because I'm just feeling like a lot of the symptoms. And sure enough, I came home, I took a pregnancy test, we were pregnant. Well, I knew something was up because the pregnancy test was very faint. So it
Mm-hmm.
made me feel like, by now, based on everything, it should probably be a darker line. And of course, or immediately I go into anxiety mode. Just this, I'm going Googling, I'm taking like a million pregnancy tests, and they all say positive, but they also, if you take the line ones, they're faint.
Mm-hmm.
And probably within 2 weeks later, my body purges it because I just started having these really strong cramps. And I go to the ER and they're like, yep, we see the gestational sac, but there's no baby inside. And so I knew at that time then that, this wasn't a viable pregnancy anymore. And so I basically shut down, Michelle. To anyone who's listening to this, I completely shut down. I don't know how to like I just had this profound sadness, and I just feel like there was nothing at that time that could make me happy except for maybe my son. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just shut down. Like I was not like I could tell that a piece of me had kind of like died or something. Like I
Yeah.
just wasn't the same. And it's hard to even think about because I'm typically a happy go lucky super person that's always like ready to have fun, talk to friends. I didn't talk to anyone. I only talked to my husband. I talked to my mom and my sisters. That's it. I didn't talk to anyone outside of that because I was really going through it. And I was getting in a state of depression. And I had prayed and just kind of was like, I need to get out of this. What can I do? And it's so interesting that I swear, like I had been trying to heard about acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had kind of started to say, is there a podcast out there that I can listen to? Because I'm a big podcast person. So I remember doing a quick Google search for acupuncture, and I was like, man, this is really expensive. Well, and I was like, I'll just put that on the back burner, whatever. And then when I was on my Spotify account or my Apple Podcast account, and I came up, saw Wholesome Fertility,
Mm-hmm.
that was like your podcast popped up. And it was amazing because I remember listening to the episode with Nancy, and I remember like I was driving somewhere and it was like 40 minutes away. I was like, okay, I can listen to this podcast because, this is a little road trip where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, let me go on this road trip, or where I think I was going to like another city that was far away. And I was like, let me just listen to this podcast on the way there and back. And it was like she literally spoke to me through that episode. And I remember she was talking about the power of manifestation
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and how you have to almost best your thoughts. Because she said, even herself, like when she was going through her whole fertility journey and even just becoming a mother, she didn't know how she would become a mother. She just knew she would become a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that she was talking about how her two embryos were in Atlanta
Yeah.
and she lived somewhere completely different. And she moved down there for like, I think her husband's job or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very short amount of time that she was down there. And she was like, and I realized the reason why we were really down there is because I was supposed to carry these babies.
Mm-hmm.
And they had been in there for a long time. And when she told this story, I was just like, man, it like kind of gave me chills a little bit. Like, this is crazy. And I was like, I wonder what I can do to kind of manifest, like things that I'm going through. And
It's
I was like,
if
well, for
anybody
one,
wants to hear it, it's episode 152, by the way. Just in case people are really
and it's
curious.
a great episode. I
Yeah.
listened to it like probably 4 times now
Amazing. I'll tell
because
her.
it's,
She's gonna love hearing this.
yes, she and I follow each other. I don't know if you talked to her, but I was like, oh, Nancy's
No,
following
that's
her.
amazing though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Like
as
I
if she
follow her
knew.
now.
Well, she's intuitive, so
Yes.
she knows.
Yes. She knows. She has it. Yes.
She does.
And so she like was very much just speaking to me and gave me this like calm and peace. And I always believe everything happens for a reason. Like you were the only podcast that I had ever listened to. I mean, and then it's like now I'm listening to the episode about manifestation and controlling your thoughts and having positive thoughts and all that, because I was in deep negativity. Like I couldn't even look on social media. I had to shut down my social media accounts. I friends that were pregnant, I still reached out, like they would still reach out to me and I would still see how they're doing, but it was super hard,
Hmm.
and I was happy for them, of course, but hurting for myself in that sense. And the craziest part about this was that right after I get off the I'm done with the episode, all of a sudden I've never been to this place. There's this place called the Zen Ben in Minneapolis, and that's where I'm from. I'm from Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, grew up in Minneapolis, and it's like a very holistic yoga studio. They do like meditation, they do chakras, all this stuff there with Reiki doctors and stuff like that. And they were giving away free acupuncture on Mondays.
Oh my God.
And mind you, I had been like, so like I'm like deep in your podcast now at this point, Michelle. So I know you're an acupuncturist. Like I'm like, I gotta find somebody who can help me with acupuncture and I can't afford it. Like it's really expensive to consistently go. And they were giving free, and it was crazy because I had never heard of this place. I didn't even sign up on their mailing list. And here they were sending me this email. I'm like, when did I even get on this mailing list?
Wow,
So I
that's so
start going.
cool.
Yes. So I start going and I promise you this, I always tell Dr. Ray, that was my acupuncturist. Shout out to her. She's actually pregnant herself right
Oh,
now. And
amazing.
yes. And I always tell her, like, you manifested this baby like through me coming, because she herself was very much about manifestation. And, she's just a very calm person. And I remember when I was telling her and she was giving me times to breathe and to release through her acupuncture and her wellness. Very, very good. And it calmed me down. And so in December, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this 25 days of manifestation. I'm just going to like put it all out there. I was like, I will have a baby. I was like, I am channeling having a baby. I want a baby. I want a healthy baby and I want to be happy. And I remember saying, I'm also grateful. Like I was practicing gratitude and just being appreciative of having, at least I have a son. Like I have experienced at least the birth of my son. And he's a rambunctious, fun 5-year-old now. And at the time, he was just like super sweet, super like, mommy, it's okay, like.
Oh,
And one day, my son comes up to me, and this is before I even got pregnant. And that's why I always think like everything is there's a power clearly. He goes, mommy, I'm gonna have a sister. My sister's in there.
I
And
just got the chills.
I kid you not, Michelle, it was the crazy. And I remember because it was right after I had the second miscarriage. So that's why it was even stranger. Like, okay, mommy just had a miscarriage. Like, mommy is definitely not pregnant. And he kept saying that. And he was not like, and I took a pregnancy test one time, like maybe he knows something and it's negative. So I'm like, that's so strange. And he's like, mommy. So then in December, when I was doing my manifestation, he comes up to me again. He's like, mommy, I'm having a sister next year. And he's 4.5 at this point. So it's like he's still a baby. Like, how does he know any of these things? And I get pregnant like a week later. And I just remember being like, I cannot believe this kid said that. And I remember finding out I was pregnant because we had actually went to Miami for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And and I come back from Miami and it was like the January 2nd because I in Miami I was really sick, like with a cold. And I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't have Omicron. Like I hope I
Right.
don't have COVID, you know.
Yeah, it's like
Please.
that was back then.
Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Which you find out later, it's your body's immune system, like
Hmm.
kind of lowering itself to accept
Right.
pregnancy. Like it's all science, you know, when you think
Yep.
about it and the universe working. But so I get home, it's January 2nd. I'm like, and I remember the day before, that night before, I literally had a dream that I was in a car with my husband and my son is right there and he's talking next to a 16-year-old who looks just like me. And it's a girl and they're having this conversation and my son is 21 and this girl who is
Oh my God, I get the chills
my
again.
daughter, she's 16. And they're just talking. I'm sitting in the back seat, I'm watching them and I'm just like, this is so cute, you know, and I wake up and I'm like, I think I'm pregnant. Sure enough, I take a test, I'm pregnant. And it's crazy because I knew at that point, Michelle, that this pregnancy was going to stick. There was so many things surrounding it that it just like the manifestation, you know, stumbling upon your podcast, listening to Nancy talk about manifestation, my son telling me he's going to have a sister, you know, all of these things that I was like, this is crazy. Like, there's no way that this pregnancy is not going to come to fruition. I just knew something in me. And I honestly feel like that was God's way of like comforting me and saying it's going to be okay
Hmm.
because that was what was different about the other two pregnancies that I'd had. It was like previously, it was like I had never had all of these things align the way that this one did.
Hmm.
And so, of course, when it was time to do genetic testing, I would, of course, wanted to know the gender, and it's a little girl. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I was just like, this is crazy. Like, I remember I was driving the grocery store, I almost ran off the road, the grocery store, because I was so
Yeah.
excited. And I was just like, I can't believe that this is happening now. And super healthy pregnancy. I mean,
Thank
she
God.
yes, thank God. Like there are so many things that can go wrong that I've
Hmm.
learned a part of listening to your podcast, I learned a part of the community. It's like it's literally a miracle we're all here in a way.
Hmm.
And
It is
just
absolutely.
yes, it is. And it's like the fact that my daughter was kind of manifested into this whole like process and now she's here. Michelle just saw her. She's like 2 months and a
She's
little
adorable. She's delicious.
yes, yes. And the fact that she's here now is just crazy to me. And it's a testament to the power of your thoughts, the power of your
Hmm.
words, to always know that there's always hope.
Hmm.
Where I was mentally last year versus where I am today is like night and day difference. I can't even believe how much I've come full circle. And I feel really blessed and happy that it worked out. And what I loved about listening to your podcast was the fact that it always felt that even if someone didn't have a baby at the end of your podcast, it always felt like you had hope. Like
Hmm.
it always ended on a note that was like positive, like, you know, I'm going to continue to, you know, eat well. And then I learn about nutrition and stuff. Like
Hmm.
all of this stuff went into play, like learning about BPA, plastic, stuff that I
Right.
had never even thought of when I had my
Totally.
versus now where I'm like, now it's a lifestyle thing. Like now you
Hmm.
can't find plastic in my house, you
And you know
know.
what? And then you know how, I mean, for your children, that's a gift. That's a gift for them not to be around
Absolutely.
certain toxins. And you definitely learn things that you wouldn't have learned otherwise.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because you learn in this when you're pregnant, you're actually pregnant with, when you have a girl, you're pregnant with your grandkids
Hmm.
too.
That's right.
And I always think of like, so like ethnically, I'm Nigerian. And my grandmother was pregnant with me and my mom's
Mm-hmm.
ovaries. When she was pregnant with my mom, I was already in her body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about how culturally our food is very organic in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents had a farm. They had the yams, they
Mm-hmm.
had, the greens, they had
Everything
everything
was from the earth. Yeah. And
from the
interestingly
earth.
enough, because we've talked about this, I actually lived in Nigeria for a short period of time when I was younger. So we had that connection because I do remember eating the food there and I loved it.
Yes,
Loved
yes.
it.
It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
especially like the food, the culture, all of that. It's amazing. And it's crazy when with us coming to the United States, my family, my parents immigrating here, me being first generation, we learn about what we can and cannot eat anymore. Like, having high cholesterol, things like that in our family, diabetes runs in our family, stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And at home, it wasn't such a problem where it is here because our food is different. It's
Right.
like compounds over
Exactly.
time, like when you're eating fatty fast foods and stuff like that. Like I remember, there was a point in time in this fertility journey where I was just like, oh, I need to learn about some of these things just in general. Like this isn't even about getting pregnant. This is about like I need to make sure that I'm not like exposing my kids to like toxins.
Hmm.
I'm eating healthy, incorporating more veggies into my diet, stuff like that. It's like I can never stress the importance of gut health in this
Oh, yeah.
process.
Yeah. Big
Like
time.
people think it's so that's why it's so important. And I learned so much from your podcast that it's like I feel like I could write a mini book that's like like this podcast helped me do XYZ and this is why it's so great. But yeah, it was amazing to like listen to your podcast because it taught me how to overall be a better person inside and out, and with my health and with my mental state and with my body, and just enjoying the journey of fertility, not even just being necessarily pregnant, but like I said, the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I do actually see even the dark times as part of very pivotal and very necessary as well, because it's through that, it's through like being broken open that you really experience yourself on a different level. Like you wouldn't have experienced all the learnings that you've had it not been for the dark times as well. Like it's like all of it together
Yeah.
is what brings that growth.
Well, when you think about it, it's like I had hit rock bottom, so there was only one way to go, and that was up.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like you said, I used to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how depressed I was. But it's like, you're right. It was actually how I was able to seek your podcast and how I was able to manifest some of these things and to find the acupuncturist and stuff like that. Like there was just all these things that needed to happen. And in order for it to happen, I had to hit rock bottom and go through those dark times.
Definitely, definitely. And I do remember us speaking before, I think it was around the time you were in Florida or maybe when you came back. And at first it was going to be for fertility, and then you found out you were pregnant and you said you still wanted to continue because even though you knew, like even with all of those things, like you still are human and you had those back and forth and things that came up. And then you really, what was amazing for me, I felt like you were so open to just having every moment and saying, okay, let me look at this. You were willing to be open with yourself
Yeah.
emotionally and like really accepting every moment that you had to go through the difficulties when they presented themselves. And they didn't always present. You had breaks. And then, those things do come up because it's PTSD from
Yes.
past experiences, but you still had a knowing, but it still does sometimes like peep up.
Yes. Because what's interesting is our first meeting, I didn't know I was pregnant. We had our
Right. That was
first
it.
meeting.
Our discovery call, I think. It was a discovery
Yes,
call.
our just
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly discovery call. Yes. And so I was like, yep, I'm gonna sign on. I'm gonna work with Michelle and everything's gonna be great because Michelle knows what she's doing. So, and literally over the weekend is when I found out I was pregnant. And I chose to work with you because I knew you would get my mind right no matter what happened. And I knew that my anxiety and my overall, like where I had been, was creeping in the back of my mind. And I
Mm-hmm.
needed in order for me to carry this pregnancy in the first trimester,
Mm-hmm.
I needed to calm my mind. And so I still wanted to work with you because I needed peace,
Mm-hmm.
because like you said, the PTSD from having back to back miscarriages, hell, even one miscarriage could
Yeah,
land you
absolutely. Like it's very traumatic.
very traumatic. I knew at that point in time that for me, it was about like, I need to get my mind state
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah.
And I need it with someone who understands my journey and understands what I'm going through, because she's talked to so many women and has done so much research and understood where I was coming from. Because sometimes family, they mean well, but
Mm-hmm.
like, they don't always say it in a way that you need them to say it, or they don't
Totally.
realize
And they're
like
like too close. Sometimes it's
too
too close.
close.
Yeah.
Close. I remember, I just remember being like having these conversations with my mom or my sisters, and they just really did not understand it because they hadn't went through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I told them. I said, until you really go through what I went through, you really won't understand. I mean, it's like anything in life. If you experience is the best teacher. So
Totally. And I'll tell you, I loved working with you. There's something about
thank
your energy that I felt also very connected with. Like, and that's the thing I want to stress is that it's a two-way street. Like I also feel very connected with some of my patients. It's just like it has to be a chemistry. And for me, I really enjoy working with people that I know I can help and that are open. And you were always really open and willing to explore your feelings and like really be vulnerable and open, which I'll tell you that goes a long way. I know that sounds very
yeah.
simplistic, but it's not easy to do. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's hard being vulnerable sometimes, and even just sharing like stuff that's like really super personal, because even with the miscarriages, it's like there's a shame associated with it that I genuinely felt.
Mhm.
Like I was embarrassed to have these miscarriages, and I kept saying like, look, at you can't even carry a child again, like, you thought you could have another kid so easily, and clearly you can't. It's
It's
like,
like that voice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's a very nasty voice in your head that's telling you what you can and cannot do. And
Hmm.
it it's so out of your control too, with having a kid sometimes, that you would love to say, yeah, I'm gonna have a kid on this date at this time, and this
Totally.
gender, but that does not work
Yeah.
that way.
No, no, it
And
doesn't.
no, it's the faith that that it's going to work out, or that you are. And honestly, there are people who have been on this journey way longer than me and still don't have a kid. And my heart even goes out for them. Like, you got to keep going. You still got to function in life. You still got to go to work. If you
Hmm.
if you are a parent who already from a previous child, then you got to be strong for them. Like, there's so many things that is associated with this that you don't even think about until you go through it.
Right.
So
Our AC's getting fixed. So if you guys hear stuff in the background, just ignore it. But yeah, absolutely. It's something that is so hard because it's out of your control. And then what happens is when you do get to this fearful place, the first thing that you want is some kind of stability in the process and
yeah.
to make you feel safe. And then when you don't get that stability, it really rocks your world, the ground that you're on. That's what it feels like, and it can really like shake your reality. So to be able to get through that, and then also on top of it, you experience something that a lot of my patients experience, which frustrates me to hear. But I remember you intuitively knew that you wanted to get like certain treatment protocols, or at least the doctors to tell you what was going on, or at least look into it. And they wouldn't, despite you asking for them to test and check for
Yeah.
certain things. And that on top of it, that's like another layer of trauma.
Yeah. It is because the truth is when I had to do my DNC, that was because I advocated for myself. When I had taken my Protozol, I knew that there was still something inside of my uterus. Like I could feel it.
Hmm.
And I kept calling them and saying, I'm still bleeding. I should have had my period by now. And they kept saying, oh, it's normal. It's normal. And I was like, I don't think that this is normal. It feels like
You
abnormal.
knew. Yeah.
I knew that something was strange. And I could feel that there was still something still inside of me. And um finally I was like, I think I just need an ultrasound just to confirm that there's nothing going on. And sure enough, I do ultrasound and there's still a piece of the placenta in my uterus. And it's like, oh, I could tell she was embarrassed, to be completely honest, when
Hmm.
she was like, because she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like this is getting dragged out and there actually, you see, right, she was like showing me the screen, like there actually is something here that's probably, from your previous. She's like, I'll do a DNC. And because she was giving me a couple options, like, we could let it pass on its own and stuff. And I was like, it's already been like 2 months. Like,
Yeah.
no,
No, no, absolutely
this
not.
is like, yeah, this is dragging on. And so when she ended up doing the DNC, they tested the mass, and of course it was a piece of the placenta. And it's like, how long would this have went on, if I didn't say anything, or it could have infected me, or it could have caused other issues. You just never know. And,
Absolutely.
and even like, I'm not going to say the clinic, but even when it was the second miscarriage, I mean, they were very like, oh, matter of fact, like, we don't know what's going on. I'm sure it's just a string of bad luck. Like, it was like completely like, no, I really want to make sure if I get pregnant a third time, I'm not going to go through this because I really do have RPL or something. Like, I really need to understand if something's going on with me.
Hmm.
Um, and luckily, through my husband's insurance, we were able to see a couple fertility clinics in this process just to do a HSG, just to do, some sperm analysis, just to make sure, because even though I still had faith that I was going to work out, I needed to know what I was up against and be
Love
prepared.
that. I'm telling you, like what you said right now is gold because that's what it is. Perfect. Because yes, it's important to have faith, but yes, it's important to also like look into everything, look into get the tests, be realist,
Yeah,
and also have faith, both of them at the same time.
yeah, you can't do one without the other.
No,
And
it's the
it's
yin and the
kind of
yang.
like, yeah, you can. And yeah, like of course, it's kind of like that whole like saying like God helps who help themselves. Like I
Hmm.
really believe in still being proactive and still
Absolutely.
like praying and having faith and that it's all going to work out. And I just feel like the more the better you will be able to kind of deal with things as they come about. When I did the HSG, they were like, this is great, but we also noticed you have fibroids,
Hmm.
and even in this pregnancy, my fibroids have grown. That may be
Hmm.
an issue later on that I kind of need to address because I remember this whole time we were thinking it was her foot. No, it's a fibroid that is
Hmm.
sitting right there on top of my uterus. And as my stomach was growing, it was becoming more and more pronounced.
Hmm.
So it's like things like that, like if we knew more about our wellness and our health, I mean, I think me and you talked about this, Michelle, like I used to think a guy touched you and you would get pregnant.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like
Because they don't teach you
talk
about
about misinformation.
I
It's like,
know it's like, huh?
what they teach teenage girls and boys. I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, or even just making you go on birth control for like every remedy of
Yeah.
like, oh, you heavy periods, birth control. Oh,
Right.
acne, birth control.
Yeah,
Oh, like
exactly.
it's like, huh? Like maybe we should think about what's really going on. Someone's
Mhm.
skin is breaking out. Maybe they have a food reaction and we're just not addressing it. If
Totally.
someone's having heavy periods, it's actually not normal. Maybe we should see if they have fibroids or things
Hmm.
going on like that. It's like that's why acupuncture is actually really important. I'm always going to advocate for it and always going to do it is because it really does balance out your like my acupuncturist got me back to 28 days.
Hmm.
and and that was how I was able to identify my cycles and my ovulation better.
Yeah.
It helped balance out my FSH and, some of the hormones that are my progesterone and stuff like that. Like, even if it worked, maybe it was working now at more of an optimal peak because I had done acupuncture.
Hmm.
There's certain things that I mean, I truly believe she harvested my egg because, it takes 90 days for the egg to
Hmm.
like mature and like come out. I truly believe that she was responsible for why I have a baby girl right now. Uh,
Amazing.
because I could tell the difference in my body. I could,
Yeah.
even when I'm eating foods and my digestive system, we talked about gut health. Like, it's just crazy how much you don't know going into this. And it actually should be a lifestyle and health thing. It shouldn't
It should
just
be taught at schools. That's what it should be taught to
absolutely.
kids. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've had now conversations with both of my, because I'm the oldest, I have two younger sisters, with both of them and say, listen, I know one is actually engaged, so she's probably closer to having kids at this point. And I told her, I said, your fertility starts to decline at 27, but it really speeds up after 35. But the thing you have to remember too is that you need to take care of yourself, because there's this notion of like, you can't have kids after 35.
Mhm.
But if you
It's not
take,
true. Because you could
it's not
reverse your
true.
age. You could reverse your biological age
Yes,
through lifestyle.
exactly. You can increase your ovarian reserve through
Hmm.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's so easy when you go to these clinics and these doctors, because they themselves are very much like have the God complex and like, oh, this is what the stats say. And this is,
Mhm.
but every person is individual. I
Right.
truly believe
We're
that.
not numbers. We're just not numbers.
No, we're
Yeah.
not like boxes and it's
Nope.
all the same and we're made at a warehouse. No, we're not. So
Exactly.
we, it doesn't matter if you're young or old, fertility can still be preserved in many ways. And
Hmm.
I tell both of them, like, you just take care of yourself, take care of the foods you're consuming, take care
Hmm.
of, what we're putting topically on us. I learned so much about what shampoo. I actually don't wear a lot of makeup in general, but like, even learning about, less toxic chemicals and stuff like that on my skin, on my hair. Like I said, the plastic thing, like, I have yet to find a plastic container in my house
Good
now.
for
Like,
you.
I
It's almost like taking that red pill. You cannot unsee it anymore.
no, no, you can't. So
Yeah.
so I mean, it's learning a lot about yourself and stuff like that, but finding information. I am an information person. Like, I don't sit in my ignorance forever. Like, I'm like, I want to learn something, let me go seek out where I can find out how I can learn about it. And I learn about it deep. Like, I don't
Hmm.
just like touch the surface. I'm like going in all the different facets, of different things. And that's just how I am. I'm a life learner. And I think it's important to also use critical thinking in,
Absolutely.
in these decisions of your health
But
and
you
your body.
also have an intuition, and I will say that just based on your whole story and just knowing, like you do have, all of us do. I mean, it's a real strong intuition, but good for you for advocating for yourself because it
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to do that, to advocate for yourself, especially in the face of like, nah, it's in your mind, it's going to be fine. And so you're like, okay, well, these are the professionals. And so good for you for standing up for yourself because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. I mean, when you think about Black maternal health,
Mhm.
I'm African American. I, I, I mean, the contrast between when I had my son versus having my daughter was night and day. Like, again, the when I had my son, they're like shoving their hand in my cervix because he was late and they had to induce me. And they don't tell you Pitocin actually can sometimes make it worse,
Mhm.
because it actually sometimes slows the baby. A lot of people I've heard who take Pitocin to like dilate, their baby's heartbeats, and then they end up like, oh, we got to get an emergency C-section.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you got to let the body do what the body is doing. I didn't even know I could labor on my own until this pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I labored on my own. I dilated on my water broke, but they
It's a
had
natural thing. It's treated like it's a medical condition, but it's a natural
yes,
thing.
it's a natural thing. And where last time I didn't even get to see my son for 24 hours, this time they put her right on my breast.
Mm-hmm.
She latched on right away. I had skin to skin contact,
Mm-hmm.
completely different experience.
Oh, it
Where
makes
I
such a
remember,
difference.
yeah, it did. And not to mention my postpartum versus that time versus this time, like I essentially had no postpartum this time, where last time it went on for months
Mm-hmm.
because of this disruption of natural birth, of not doing the skin to skin, of not connecting with my baby. My poor baby, it took me 4 months to really connect with my son, where with my daughter, it was instantaneous.
Yeah,
So,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, Angelica, your story is so amazing. I can speak to you for hours, and I really appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable here on the podcast, because I just know that your story is going to resonate with so many people listening. And I
Yeah.
personally love you. I really had a connection with you. I just think you're extremely smart, intuitive, and courageous to really to stand up for yourself. And so your whole story really resonated with me. So this is why I'm so excited to have you on and share it on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Thank you. It's an honor for sure to be on your podcast, and an honor to, have gone full circle with you, because I feel like you were my biggest reason why I got out of my rut.
Oh,
So thank you.
amazing. And also, I just love following you on Instagram, following your journey and seeing your babies and your family, your beautiful family. And so thank you so much, Angelica, for coming on today.
Thank you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.